What have they done to the earth? What have they done to our fair sister? Ravaged and plundered and ripped her and bit her, stuck her with knives in the side of the dawn, and tied her with fences and dragged her down.
The Onondaga ancestral territories stretched from the Pennsylvanian border all the way north to Canada. However, due to illegal land stealings by the state of New York, they were diminished to a reservation of only 4,300 acres. Indian agents came to take away children. Ceremonies were banned by law, and with what we know of Onondaga Lake today, they were forced to become bystanders, helplessly watching as their lands were set on fire. Syracuse in the 1800s was seen as somewhat of an untapped gold mine. Specifically, in 1846, city booster Harvey Baldwin gave a speech praising its virtues. He envisioned immense structures of compact buildings will in every direction cover this delightful plain, and all bordering territory will have been brought into a high and perfect state of cultivation. The lands that had been sacred to the Haudenosaunee for centuries before had suddenly lost all of their beauty and gained a giant price tag. From 1875 to 1920 was what local historians like to call the resort era. Quoted as the Coney Island of central New York, the lake had hotels and amusement parks littered all down its western shore. Big names at the time included the Maple Bay Hotel, Rockaway Beach, and White City Amusement Park. Rockaway was one of the last resorts that remained on the lake before being demolished in the mid-1950s in order to build the new Route 690. Today, rubble from the Victorian beach can still be seen passing over 690. But my main point is, this lake was light. This lake wasn't some random, no one will know if we dump stuff in here type of lake. Throwback to even before Harvey Baldwin, Syracuse's popularity stems from one main natural resource: salt. Syracuse is the salt city, right? So when French monasteries came here in the 17th century and discovered these rich salt deposits, they almost immediately started to industrialize. Word got around, and all of a sudden hundreds of acres of land around the lake became salt evaporation beds and boilers. Syracuse starting to grow, families coming in and such, the city realized that they had kind of a problem. We have so much poop. I think you might know where this is going, but they dumped it all in the lake. Little thing about untreated human waste is it contains all of the nutrients that our bodies don't need, the most prevalent being ammonia and phosphorus. However, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and algae loves ammonia and phosphorus, and this led to massive algae blooms that covered the entire surface of the lake. Lakes heavily rely on submerged plants to generate oxygen during photosynthesis. Without these plants, they become oxygen deficient. When these algae blooms die, they use up all of the remaining oxygen, leading to a collapse in the food chain. Pretty horrible, but you know what's worse? 165,000 pounds of mercury being dumped into the lake. All of this begins in 1882 when William Cogsworth brings his Solvay Process Company to the eastern shore of Onondaga Lake, their main product being soda ash. Onondaga Lake was described as the most ideal place in America to be producing soda ash, and that is because its three main ingredients were limestone, salt, and water, three resources that Syracuse was practically bursting at the seams with. Soda ash is an essential part of other industrial processes, for example, glass manufacturing and paper and baking soda, and it was really this industry that fueled the growth of the whole region. However, the production of soda ash itself was incredibly flawed. First of all, president of Solvay Process, Frederick Hazard, estimated his operation was sucking 15 million gallons of water per day from the lake. The Solvay process itself was horrifically inefficient and reportedly produced about 50% more waste material than product, an estimated 6 million pounds of waste material released per day. Around 1918, the Solvay Process Company began to produce organic chemicals, dyes, and chlorine gas, using the mercury cell process to produce industrial chlorine from native salt brines. And it was the period between 1946 to 1970 that an estimated 150,000 pounds of mercury was discharged into Onondaga Lake. Swimming was banned in 1940 and fishing banned in 1970, most likely caused by not only the mercury, but the water turning into lychate. Mercury inputs were strictly reduced in the 70s after the US Attorney General sued the company. Finally, in 1986, the Syracuse factory ceased production. However, this is far from the end of the story. 3 years later, in 1989, following the 1972 Clean Water Act, Onondaga County started formulating a cleanup plan, with New York State stepping in, suing Allied Chemical for natural resource damage. This didn't actually lead to anything, so in 1994, the US Environmental Protection Agency stepped in and declared Onondaga Lake a National Priority Superfund site. But the The case of Onondaga Lake was so bad that they divided it into 12 sub-sites that also included upstream sources in the watershed. But again, even with the label of national priority, progress on the cleanup was so slow that it led us into... On March 11, 2005, the Onondaga Nation filed a complaint in federal court with the goal of reclaiming the title to their stolen homelands. In 2007, the case was taken to a court in Albany, where it was almost dismissed by New York State as they believed it would be too disruptive to the citizens of New York. But the people argued that the nation sought legal recognition to the title of their homelands in order to gain the standing necessary to push the restoration of the land forward, not to move landowners. The Onondaga differed from other nations in these cases because they didn't see it as a land claim, they saw it as a land rights action. Their complaint was made under US law, however, its moral power comes from the Great Law, to act on behalf of peace, the natural world, and the future generations. Unfortunately, in 2010, the Onondaga land rights case was officially dismissed by a federal judge as it was deemed too disruptive for the American people. This pretty much sums up the case. However, in 2014, the nation filed a suit against the US in World Court for their actions taken against the Haudenosaunee, but as of right now, the case has yet to be presented or argued. Since Onondaga Lake was not only the most polluted lake in the US, but the entire North American continent, local, state, and federal environmental agencies have all offered up solutions at one point or another. Many have been tested, and some have worked, but many more have failed, such as hundreds of millions of dollars spent on upgrading the municipal sewage infrastructure just for these nutrients to continue freely entering the ecosystem from combined sewer overflows. And more famously, Honeywell's plan. They plan on dredging and cleaning the most contaminated sediments and then burying them in a sealed landfill in the waste beds. Although there's many, the main issue with this plan is a lot of the pollutants have diffused into the sediments that have dispersed over the entire lake. So the Honeywell plan is to just leave those sediments and simply cover them with a 4-inch layer of sand. Today, an estimated 7 million cubic yards of lake sediments are still contaminated with mercury. Regulators believe that at this point, the cleanup is mostly complete. However, when you're describing something deadly to be at manageable levels, how sure are we? As of doing this project, Onondaga Lake is still considered a Superfund site by the EPA, although it was kind of unclear if it was still on the national priorities list. After 45 years of being banned, fishing is now allowed in specific areas, however, many signs are up warning against it, and local officials have even presented the idea for a public beach on the lake. However, nobody wants that. So, in conclusion, the history of Onondaga Lake affects us every day whether we are aware of it or not. This case goes to show that what lies ahead, not only for the future of Onondaga Lake, but the planet as a whole, is uncertain. If the stories of humans so long ago can be relevant today, it is hard to say if reform is an achievable goal, at least in our lifetime. But I can say that the Onondaga Nation will fight until the end for their land, the land they let us call ours, and stand for unity and peace among all, no matter what. Go out and learn from these people. Lift the voices of those who have been silenced. Go out and be grateful, because tomorrow is never guaranteed. Live and love for today.
Thanks for watching.